Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Town. I'm the consulting manager with our classification and compensation team here at Baker Tilly. We're excited today to present the classification and compensation study results and recommendations for the city of Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Today, I want to be able to walk through our entire project methodology, as well as covering some of those project results, the results from job evaluation and our internal equity, the external equity results from the market study, as well as how we used both sets of that data to determine and make pay plan recommendations. We'll walk through exactly what our recommendations are, as well as the next steps. So we worked through a 5-phase process with the city. It started with the data collection, where we had project planning meetings to discuss the goals for the study and the current challenges. We did a large data collection request, including updating and obtaining the existing job descriptions. We then went through position review, where updated job descriptions were used to review titles and make recommendations for changes, as well as apply our job evaluation system to establish internal equity. Next, we went through a market assessment, where we had a collection of base pay information from peer organizations. Then we went into pay plan development and grade assignments, got information and insight and feedback from directors, and then we did implementation calculations to understand what this is going to cost financially for the city. What we have currently is our last phase, where we're in project completion, producing the final report and presentations, and then turning over documentation and final training. So a little bit more detail about each of these phases. In data collection, we start by collecting data from the city. So we're understanding what your current pay structure is, your policy handbook, obtaining those job descriptions and organizational charts, as well as a large census file with the names of the employees that we'll be working for as part of this project. Using those existing job descriptions, some of those job descriptions were updated. We used those as the basis for our entire classification review. Those were reviewed by directors, and we wanted to make sure that the titles were appropriately reflecting the nature and level of work. That became the basis for our study. Next, we went into the classification review. So Baker Tilly has its own point factor job evaluation tool called SAFE, which stands for the Systematic Analysis Factor Evaluation, which was specifically designed to measure the internal equity of local government jobs. A point factor evaluation like SAFE allows for us to have a consistent, equitable, and defensible means of establishing the hierarchy of jobs, or that internal equity within the organization. It's based on 9 compensable factors, the typical ones like education and experience, but we're also looking at the level of work, or the degree of difficulty of the work performed, human relations, who you interact with and what that interaction is like on a daily basis, the physical demands of the position, the working conditions or those environmental exposures, whether you have autonomy and independence to make decisions and act upon those decisions, what are the impact of those decisions on the organization as a whole, and the type and level of supervision exercised. What this allows us to do is has an end result for a total score for each position. Next, we went into market assessment. So we worked with the city to determine the public peer organizations. These are organizations that look like you, work like you. They may be similar in size, so revenue, population, number of employees. We also wanted to have a diversity of services provided, looking at geographic proximity. Really, it's those organizations that you're in competition for talent with, who you're losing talented employees to, or who you're gaining talent from. Those public peer organizations are then incorporated with our published salary source data. So private sector companies cannot call each other up and ask what they're paying their employees. They're bound by anti-price fixing legislation. So they report into a series of published survey data, and that's what we use here to represent our private sector as well. But the majority of the data does come from those public peer organizations. We put out a survey that has the list of the benchmark positions. A benchmark position is just a job that is commonly found in the workplace and is really making sure that we have that match within other organizations. Now, we don't just do a title for title matching. We provide a summary of work as well as the minimum education and minimum experience requirements for each of the benchmark positions. Those were reviewed by directors to ensure accuracy and appropriately reflecting the work before the market survey was put out. Once we get all of that data back, we do some data adjustments. So something like work week. If another organization is on a 37.5 work week, we need to be able to make sure it's comparable to Stevens Point at a 40 hours. So we're ensuring that the annualized salaries are the same. We may age the data if it's not for the current fiscal year. And we also do a cost of labor differential. Now, that's not the same thing as cost of living, and I will get into exactly what that looks like, but it's ultimately a cost of labor differential drilling into the specific geographic area to understand what is the compensation being paid. We do a pretty rigorous quality control process. So we are looking at having a sufficient number or quantity of matches, and we also want to make sure that we have quality matches. So we require at least 3 matches per benchmark position to determine a market value. Kind of hard to say that this is the market when we only have 1 data point. So we require at least 3 to determine that market value. We also want to make sure that it's a good match. So we require a 75% overlap in the major duties and responsibilities to be considered a good match. Most importantly, though, the market data is not weighted. So no peer is given preference over another. No one peer is pushing the data in any one given direction. This is all based on aggregate averages. So the city identified 10 public peer organizations to be included in the study. We were able to collect and compile data from all 10 of those. We also incorporated data from 6 published surveys. 3 of those, meaning 14, 15, 16 here, Comp Analyst, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the Economic Research Institute, were those to represent the private sector. We also included 3 additional surveys at the request of the city. So a little bit more about that data adjustment that we do on cost of labor differential. Most folks know what cost of living is, and that's the costed measurement of goods and services in an area. It's why gas prices are high or why egg prices are high in the grocery store. What we need to drill into is the specific cost of labor, understanding what is the measurement of compensation being paid in a given geographic area. So while cost of labor is influenced by cost of living, that premium put on salaries for the higher cost of living index, what we really want to understand is that supply and demand of labor. So we're looking at the rate of unemployment and the number of qualified laborers to fill vacant positions. Our data comes from the Economic Research Institute. They have a geographic assessor tool, which allows us to drill into a specific geographic area, in this case, Stevens Point, to be able to understand what is that cost of labor. So at the top of this graph here, you see that the cost of labor in Stevens Point is 92.1. This is based off of a scale of 100, the United States average being 100. So Stevens Point's cost of labor is just a little bit less than the national average. We take that same ERI indicator for each of the peer organizations as well as our private sector data and do the adjustments to make sure it's an apples to apples comparison. So in the case of West Bend, Wisconsin, where their economic research indicator or their cost of labor is 101, we adjusted their data down by 8.9% to take that premium placed on their salaries, given that cost of labor, out of the equation. We're taking that regional difference off of the table, making sure that we're really drilling into what is the true base salary and compensation being paid for each of the positions. Here are our results. In total, we included 80 positions that were included in the market survey as benchmark positions. Now, we had also conducted a market assessment of the city's utility positions earlier this year, and those results are not included in these counts in this section here when I'm discussing the market results, but those results were incorporated into our analysis and into the development of the pay plan. So of those 80 positions, we had 5 that came back as insufficient data, meaning they had less than 3 matches and a market value is not calculated. We do have some other methodology for determining appropriate grade placement when we don't have a market value. So we also rely on the current equity or the current pay plans in alignment, but we also look at the job evaluation scores where every position in the organization was scored. We have some consideration for being able to establish those grade assignments even without market data. But overall, the study yielded market results for 94% of the city's benchmark positions. Best practices say that in order to update pay plans or adjust pay structures to new market conditions, we need to have market values for at least 50% of the city's positions. So we're well above that threshold here. Really strong market data coming from this study. In our reporting, we also prepare an average minimum, midpoint, and maximum for each of the 75 benchmark positions with sufficient data. We also look at a comparison of what are Stevens Point's current midpoints and the market average midpoint. We focus on midpoint because that's commonly referred to as the market value for a position. When somebody is fully proficient in their role, ideally being paid at that midpoint, a function of how people move through their system, getting them to that midpoint is the goal. While we want minimums to be competitive, so we are able to recruit and attract talent to Stevens Point, we also want to make sure that we are compensating employees fairly based on those market midpoints or those market values for each of the positions. So we also compare some additional thresholds. We look at 5% above, 5% below of market, so we can start to determine what is the compensation philosophy of Stevens Point, whether you're wanting to match market or lead market or even strategically lag. Draft pay plans were aligned to markets at the midpoint, ensuring that we're making sure that we're having those market values determine what is the pay structure moving forward. Some additional results and a little bit more detail about those. So the average midpoint and minimum, midpoint, and maximum were prepared for the benchmark positions. Those benchmarks had on average 5.2 matches, and about a quarter of the data set actually had 8 or more matches each. So again, strong showing of market data. The more matches you have, the stronger and the more confident you are in the market results. We're looking at the thresholds of current midpoints in comparison to market midpoints, and then we also do a comparison of the current pay ranges against market pay range averages. So this is on a whole, on average, for all of the positions included in the study. The city's minimums are at 3.9% ahead of market at the minimums. Midpoints are 1.2% behind market, and maximums are 5.3% behind market. So competitive here in the minimums. We want to make sure that we're still competitive in the minimums, but we may be lagging behind when it comes to the midpoints or even the maximums. So retaining talent becomes important. When we adjust pay structures based on this new market data, we're taking the full range into consideration. Now, market is but one part of the puzzle. We also have those job evaluation scores. So we use the external equity comparison of market and the internal equity, those job evaluation scores, to make pay plan recommendations, which was our next phase. We had some discussions with the city's project team as well as directors to understand what is the pay plan currently, what's working about your existing system, and maybe what needs to be adjusted. The type of pay plan is really influenced by your organization's needs, the diversity of jobs, the diversity of grading procedures, that internal equity versus the external competitiveness, even your organizational culture and compensation philosophy. The city currently utilizes one pay structure, and we're keeping essentially that same pay structure intact with some recommendations for adjustment. In total, we had 101 positions categorized to the pay system. So this is Stevens Point's current pay ranges. It's a step and grade structure with 26 grades, though 19 of those are currently in use. It's based off of 11 steps. So what that means is we have 11 steps and only 10 of those are currently in use. The hiring philosophy of Stevens Point currently is to start folks at step 2. We want to make sure that we have a pay range that is really utilized to its fullest extent. We do have a consistent 2.75% between each step. So as you move up the pay structure, there's some consistency there. And then we're also looking at a pretty average varying midpoint differential on average of being 6%. A midpoint differential is the distance from midpoint to midpoint as you move up that pay structure. So you see that control point at the top for step 6. That's our midpoint. And so we wanted to make sure that we are assuring that the positions are categorized correctly and that the proposed pay plan is adjusted to market values. So this is what we're proposing. It's a 20 grade and 11 step structure. So keeping the same 11 steps, but now we're utilizing all 11 steps. And we have 20 grades labeled A through T. What this does is it's also going to shift according to the market and the job evaluation scores. We take an average of those 6% midpoint differentials, keeping the same consistent 2.75% increase between steps. Nothing changes there. But what we are looking at is aligning this pay structure to 103% of market at the midpoints. So Stevens Point, based on the conversations and looking at the market results, is taking still a lead market philosophy, leading the market by 3%. The new starting minimum wage for the city is $19.43 compared to what it is currently at $18.87. We run everything that we do through a regression analysis. This is allowing us to determine those outliers. What we have here is the job evaluation scores along the bottom, the market values along the right side. And so what we're looking at here is each of these blue dots represents a benchmark position where we had data available for both the job evaluation scores and market values. The dark blue line here through the middle is the line of best fit, or that regression line. What this is showing is that there's a 90% correlation between the job evaluation scores and market values. So we can continue using SAFE, the job evaluation system, to score positions. It's working well for the city, and we want to continue and maintain that system. What we also have here are the dotted lines and that teal line, which is the pay plan structure that we have developed to, again, align with that market value. You can see those two lines, the teal line and the blue line, running parallel to each other. We want to use the new data to make pay plan recommendations and adjustments. Now, this doesn't represent the actual grade assignments. This is coming later when we are determining what is the pay structure and then where do these positions fall on the grade scale. So we used several different components when making grade assignments. We initially assigned those positions based on the internal equity or the job evaluation scores. We consider external equity, the market midpoints. We also considered existing equity, the current midpoints or current grade groupings, specifically if we did not have market data for some of those positions. We also wanted to take a look at career progression, so making sure that we're having a sequential job evaluation system and pay grade system that is enticing for individuals to move up and take additional responsibility. We also are looking at the supervisor versus subordinate separation. What we're not looking here, though, is the person in the position. So we are just scoring the position, not looking at the person. So we're not considering performance at all, or whether or not and how long you've been employed with the city, or even what your existing salary is. We're not looking at the person in the position. We're just looking at what the position requires. All of this was based off of the job descriptions which were updated at the start of the study by directors. So preliminary grade assignments were reviewed with the city's project team just to ensure that the positions were assigned to the correct grade and then addressing any outliers. Next, we reviewed those grade assignments with the city's leadership. Some of those leadership followed up with some additional position information and our evaluation of the positions, and we ultimately had an agreement of where the position should fall on the new pay scale. So once we get the pay scale set or the pay structure planned, then we have the assignment of grades, then we start to consider and think about the individuals of these positions. This comes in when we're thinking about the implementation scenarios. So these calculations are going to reflect base pay only, and we want to be able to provide a couple of different scenarios for the city to consider when implementing our recommendations. Overall, though, Baker Tilly does not recommend a pay decrease for any employee as a result of a study. I did not get in the business of taking money away from local government employees. This is Baker Tilly's core philosophy as well. And so any employee that is at the max or even outside of their pay range was not considered for our recommendations. Our 3 implementation scenarios for the pay plan that we've proposed is the first. It's the minimum. It's really just the minimum to be able to get everyone onto the structure. So employees whose current salary is below the minimum would move to the new minimum. And then all employees are considered then moving to the next closest step in the proposed pay plan to their existing salary, resulting in an increase. Again, not taking money away from employees. Everyone is resulting here in an increase. Option 2 is an extension of option 1. Employees below the minimum would move to the new minimum. And then we're also looking at eligible employees would move to the next step, closest step +1, meaning they would receive their next step if they are eligible for a step increase in the proposed pay plan. So their adjusting salary or their existing salary would result in an increase. What this scenario does is provide any potential step increases in the future. For example, if some employees are expecting to receive a step increase on January 1st, this is the implementation scenario that is taking that next step increase into account. Option 3 was also considered by the city. This is really looking at employees would move to the same step that they are currently on in the proposed pay plan without a decrease, but because we've reevaluated those grade assignments based on the job evaluation scores and the new market data, that same step and even the same grade really don't make a whole lot of sense anymore. We've developed a brand new pay system here, and we need to find the appropriate placement for employees within that step and grade structure. So overall, our recommendations are to adopt the use of the step and grade pay plan for all of the positions, adopting the proposed grade assignments established with the feedback from those city department heads, and approve an implementation scenario that's going to address the city's compensation philosophy, leading to a lead market mentality. It's going to address your business goals, and one that is fiscally attainable and sustainable. What we've developed here is not just a pay plan for 2023, but one that can extend the life of your pay structure for the next couple of years as the city of Stevens Point grows and becomes more competitive. Our biggest recommendation, though, is just to continue efforts to maintain the classification and compensation system moving forward. So routinely review job descriptions and market conditions, adjust pay structures and salaries annually to keep pace with market, and even adopting general or merit increases annually to reward employees and ensure that there is advancement through the assigned pay ranges. Our next steps are to produce the final report, present to the council, and then we'll also be providing HR with the means and the tools they need to maintain the classification and compensation system moving forward. They will have all the materials they need as positions change and grow to reclassify positions using the Safe Job Evaluation system. And they also, as positions need to be invented and changed and are brand new, we want to find the appropriate placement based on the current methodology, using SAFE scores, using market data to determine that appropriate grade placement. That is all of our next steps, and happy to answer any questions anyone has about our recommendations. Thank you so much for your time.